The story begins with NASA suddenly detecting a mysterious spaceship drifting in space. This craft was completely wrecked, yet it was slowly moving closer and closer to Earth. As it approached, Earth's gravity began pulling pieces of the broken ship down into the atmosphere. But these fragments weren't ordinary. Some of them carried supernatural powers, while others emitted high levels of radiation, enough to dangerously affect normal humans. The shocking part? Those who came in contact with the debris began to develop strange new abilities. Recognizing the threat, the world's two most powerful intelligence agencies, the CIA and MI6, joined forces. They assigned their top agents to investigate the matter, study the mysterious pieces, and recover them at any cost. These fragments were now being called debris. The scene then shifts to a powerful mafia boss. He had arranged a meeting with a black market dealer to purchase a piece of debris. But before the deal could be finalized, chaos erupted. Two agents, Finola Jones from MI6 and Bryan Beneventi from the CIA, stormed the hotel with their tactical team. The mafia, realizing the trap, quickly tried to escape with his men. The dealer also ran, chasing after the mafia into another room. But what he witnessed left him shocked. The mafia and his associate consumed a shard of debris and instantly teleported away. The dealer himself still possessed a piece of debris. Afraid of being captured, he quickly hid it inside a drawer. Then, in a desperate move, he leapt out of the building and committed suicide. Moments later, a hotel worker stumbled upon the drawer. Inside, she discovered the glowing shard. As soon as it hit the floor, it began to levitate above the ground. Curious, she tried to pick it up, but the instant she touched it, something horrifying happened. She phased right through the wall and plummeted from the 14th floor, dying instantly. Finola and Bryan were stunned by what they had just witnessed. With the help of their science team, they extracted the dangerous energy from the shard, neutralizing it into nothing more than harmless metal. From their conversation, we also learned their true mission: to track down and recover as many debris fragments as possible so that scientists could study and experiment on them. Meanwhile, the story introduces another key character, Care. We see a young boy traveling in a car with a woman, but suddenly blood begins to flow from her eyes and she collapses unconscious. Normally, any child would have panicked in such a situation, but Karen remains strangely unaffected. Without hesitation, he opens the car door and steps out. Just then, the woman's body also begins to float out of the vehicle and drifts away through the air. The scene shifts back to Finola and Bryan, who are now flying to the city where this strange event occurred. During their conversation, it is revealed that Finola's own father had once experimented with debris, but he was later killed by a mafia. For now, they avoid discussing the painful subject any further and instead focus on the mission ahead. The next morning, they arrive at the location where the woman's body was still floating in midair, suspended only because her sweater had caught on a wire. When Bryan frees the sweater, her body drifts away, and as he follows, he discovers a horrifying sight. Dozens of other unconscious bodies floating in the air. None of them were dead but trapped in a comatose state where they could hear everything yet were unable to move or speak. Further investigation leads the team to a shocking clue. CCTV footage reveals that before collapsing, the woman had encountered a boy, the same boy, Karen, who she later took into her car. Following this lead, Finola and Bryan track down Karen's house, located in a remote wooded area. Nearby, they find a massive piece of debris that had crashed there. Inside the house, they discover Karen's mother lying unconscious, just like the others, which confirms that all of these unnatural occurrences were originating from this very place. Searching further, Finola learns that Karen has only one sister, Isla, who lives in the city. But strangely, Karen himself was nowhere to be found at home, which was suspicious since they believed he should have been there. Soon after, reports come in about all the unconscious victims, and a terrifying pattern emerges. Every single one of them was last seen with Karen before slipping into the coma. But then comes the most shocking twist. When they contact Isla, she reveals that her brother Karen had actually died 7 months earlier in a car accident. Hearing this leaves Finola and Bryan utterly shaken. If Karen was already dead, then who was this boy they had been chasing all along? Meanwhile, Karen is seen approaching yet another woman. At the same time, Finola ventures near the large fragment of debris outside the house and is overwhelmed by visions of her mother. Through this, she realizes the truth. The debris has the power to enter people's memories. It was Karen's grieving mother who had unknowingly used the shard to bring her son back, but instead of a real child, it created a hollow projection, one that now drained the energy of anyone it touched. Isla arrives, and as the agents explain their findings to her, news comes in that Karen has been spotted again with another woman. Just like before, the woman soon becomes unconscious and begins floating in the air. Finola, Bryan, and Isla rush to the scene. Meanwhile, the mafia from earlier and his associate reappear near Karen's home, attempting to steal the large debris fragment. But they are spotted by the police, and in the chaos, they once again consume a shard to teleport. This time, however, the Mafia's partner reappears fused inside a concrete pillar, fatally trapped. Knowing he cannot allow him to fall into CIA or MI6 custody, the Mafia kills his own associate before escaping. Finola and Bryan arrive too late. The Mafia slips away, leaving them empty-handed. From all these events, the agents finally piece the truth together. Karen's mother could not bear his death, and when she came in contact with the debris, its powers revived him in a false form. This projection of Karen was never real, and any woman he connected with was manipulated into believing he was her son. Only by reaching his mother could they put an end to it all. Finola explains to Isla that if she can convince their mother that Karen is truly gone and at peace, the illusion will shatter. Isla, though heartbroken, speaks to her unconscious mother with all her emotions, assuring her that Karen is happy wherever he is now. At that moment, the illusion fades. Karen disappears, and everyone who had fallen into the coma awakens, finally free. With the case resolved, Finola and Bryan neutralize the large shard of debris near Karen's home and prepare to transport it. But just as they leave, Bryan receives a call from his boss, Maddox. What he learns is even more alarming. The Mafia figure they had been chasing was recently spotted at an airport, not alone, but alongside a scientist. And that scientist was none other than George Jones. Finola still had no idea about the bigger truth. MI6 already knew, but they deliberately kept her in the dark. Maddox had also ordered Bryan not to reveal anything to her yet, because he wanted to find out why MI6 was hiding the truth from their own agent, and also what George Jones was doing alongside the Mafia. Meanwhile, Finola and Bryan travel to another town where strange phenomena are occurring. When they arrive, they discover that every piece of metal in the town has been pulled toward the border, forming a massive wall. Because of this, civilians had been evacuated. Anything metallic could suddenly fly toward the wall. Strangely, no magnetic fields or other signals were detectable, which made the agents suspect that a debris fragment had been accidentally activated, causing the anomaly. As they investigate, they encounter a frightened man named Eric, panicked and in a hurry. The agents detain him for questioning, but since more urgent matters need attention, they send him to the police station with officers while they continue searching. But when they return to their car, they are stunned. Another Eric is waiting right there. The moment he sees them, he bolts. Bryan and Finola chase him down, each catching a version of Eric in different locations. Soon, they realize something shocking. They now have not one, but 3 different Erics in custody. During interrogation, 2 of the Erics, badly injured, die, leaving only one survivor. He reveals the truth. He had recently gone through a breakup, and his girlfriend was leaving town. His desperation to stop her had consumed him, explaining his panic earlier. The agents visit his home and discover the source. In his basement lies an active debris fragment, emitting high radiation. Wearing protective suits, they venture inside, where Bryan comes into contact with the shard. Suddenly, a clone of Bryan materializes before him. The clone immediately tries to kill him, but Bryan manages to overpower and destroy it. From this, they confirm that this debris fragment has the ability to create human clones. While analyzing the dead clone's body, Finola probes Bryan about his past, but he remains silent, lost in thought. It becomes clear that Bryan carries scars from an earlier mission that he has never spoken about. Back with the science team, another revelation emerges. The Eric they believed was genuine is actually another clone, proven when they discover real Eric's blood leading toward the garage. This means the true Eric had been gravely injured and fled there. Finola and Bryan realize he must have gotten into his car, and since cars are metal, it would have been pulled toward the massive wall at the town's border. They rush to the site and soon find a car trapped under heaps of metallic debris. As Bryan pulls Eric out, the debris fragment senses the threat and begins unleashing powerful waves that disrupt the entire town. The car starts collapsing beneath falling iron structures, and both Bryan and Eric are moments from being crushed. But just in time, the scientists succeed in weakening the debris's power, halting the waves. Eric survives and regains consciousness. From Eric's words, the full picture comes together. When the shard had fallen, he had been calling his girlfriend in desperation to stop her from leaving. The debris, reacting to human emotions, granted him the power to create clones. His duplicates had tried to stop her along different routes, but when it realized she was still determined to leave, the shard responded by creating the enormous wall of metal around the town to trap her inside. To resolve the situation, Bryan convinces Eric to call his girlfriend and ask her to return. The moment Eric does so, the strange effects vanish. The magnetic wall collapses, and everything in the town returns to normal. The scientists also succeed in neutralizing the debris fragment and secure it for further study. By now, the team has understood something crucial. Each piece of debris contains a different power, and while it reacts to human emotions by granting abilities, it does not do so to help. Instead, It manipulates humans in order to absorb their energy for itself. Elsewhere, Maddox meets with Priya, Finola's MI6 superior. From her, he learns that the Mafia they encountered is actually the leader of Influx, a terrorist group intent on collecting debris fragments worldwide for their own experiments and weaponization. Priya also reveals that Finola's father, George Jones, once worked on Maddox's team before his apparent death. After George's death, all of his projects were halted. Suspicious that Priya deliberately withheld the truth, Maddox secretly has George's grave exhumed to determine whether he truly died or if his death was only staged. Meanwhile, Finola and Bryan are dispatched on another case. They meet a woman who claims she saw a blurred rectangular sphere in a nearby field. Inside, she saw a young girl pleading for help. But when the woman approached, the strange sphere vanished instantly. The agents suspect debris involvement, but fail to find any shard nearby. Still, they remain convinced that the phenomenon is linked to the fragments. That night, using specialized equipment, they monitor for unusual radiation. While calibrating the frequencies, they suddenly hear a voice calling for help, and it is Finola's own voice, echoing back to her. Moments later, they detect the girl again inside the sphere. She introduces herself as Nicole Hedges. Finola realizes the girl is trapped in another dimension. The sphere is a portal created by debris, capable of opening rifts between worlds. Before they can learn more, Nicole and the sphere vanish again. Research uncovers something even stranger. Nicole went missing back in 2019, 3 years earlier, long before the first pieces of debris ever began falling to Earth. This leaves the agents puzzled. How could she be affected before the phenomenon even began? At the same time, Maddox is seen making a shady deal with a Russian black market dealer, secretly selling fragments of debris for profit. His corruption is laid bare. Meanwhile, Finola and Bryan study one of George Jones's old theories. In his work, he identified specific dimensional points on Earth where portals could form. They realized that Nicole vanished at one of these locations, which matches Jones's predictions. Further records confirm that many other people had gone missing at similar points across different times. Those trapped together could not always see one another, which explained why Nicole appeared to be alone. Determined to free her, the agents noticed that the sphere tends to appear when Nicole is most emotional. To test this, they bring her father to the site. The moment he arrives, the portal opens again, and Nicole appears inside, overwhelmed by emotion. She explains that, to her, it feels like she has been trapped for only a few hours, but in Earth's time, 3 years have passed. Time in that dimension runs far slower. Just as she tries to share more, the portal collapses again. The scientists insist that to stabilize the opening and rescue Nicole, along with others trapped in similar rifts, they must locate the debris fragment powering the anomaly. Without it, extraction is impossible. Finola and Bryan search desperately, but once again find nothing in the immediate area. Remembering George's theories, they conclude that the shard may be sitting at a nearby dimensional point, sending its energy through the rift to fuel this portal. They set out toward the closest secondary location, hoping to uncover the fragment. Elsewhere, Maddox meets his superior, who informs him that the Russian mafia boss Tarkov has been sighted operating in their territory. This revelation adds yet another dangerous player to the already tangled struggle over debris. Maddox grows increasingly fearful, desperate to keep his ties to the Russian mafia hidden. Soon it is revealed that Turlock is the very same Russian mobster we've been seeing since the beginning. Meanwhile, Finola and Bryan arrive at the secondary dimensional point, where they finally locate the fragment of debris. Bringing it back to the portal site, they use its energy in combination with the existing shard to reopen the rift and successfully pull Nicole, and the others trapped with her, back into this world. The reunion between Nicole and her father is deeply emotional, and Finola too is moved, knowing all too well what it means to live without a parent. Back at a government lab, Maddox inspects a different piece of debris, one capable of transporting objects between two portals. But then he receives a video message that shakes him to his core. During George Jones's supposed autopsy, his body had been swapped. The corpse buried in George's grave all these years belonged to someone else, which means George never truly died. Maddox is left reeling as the truth hits him. George Jones is still alive, living in the shadows. Elsewhere, another anomaly emerges. A farmer's field is struck by localized rainfall, though outside the property the sky is clear. When he steps beyond the rainfall's boundary, he suddenly suffocates and dies. Soon after, Bryan and Finola arrive in protective suits, discovering that the air is poisoned. They learn that 3 other people have already died in the same way, their bodies expelled near the tree at the center of the anomaly. Only those sheltering inside a nearby farmhouse have survived, but only as long as they remain within the strange rainfall. Inside the farmhouse is Sophia, terrified for her young son, Arthur, who has gone missing. She pleads with the agents to bring him back. As they search, Bryan finds a field of mutated plants that shocks both him and Finola. The plants are thriving, but they are producing chlorine instead of oxygen. Sophia fears Arthur will wander outside the rainfall zone and die like the others. Bryan eventually spots him on the verge of crossing the boundary and races to save him, managing to pull him back just in time. Relieved, he returns the boy safely to his mother, but the mystery only deepens. Finola realizes that the farmer and others hadn't died simply from leaving the rainfall. They suffocated because their bodies had been altered. No longer able to breathe oxygen, they now required chlorine to live. The shard of debris in the area had corrupted the local ecosystem, re-engineering plants to produce chlorine in order to recreate the atmosphere of the alien world where the debris originated. In turn, the people inside the zone had adapted biologically, dependent on chlorine to survive. Orders soon arrive from higher command. The shard must be removed immediately to stop the spread of contamination. But Finola protests. If the shard is taken away too soon, chlorine production will cease, and everyone inside the farmhouse will die. She begs her superiors for more time to develop an antidote that might restore the victims back to normal. Bryan disagrees strongly, convinced it's impossible to reverse the changes. To him, delaying only risks the lives of countless more people in surrounding towns. He argues it would be better to sacrifice those already trapped than gamble with thousands more lives. But Finola refuses to give up. She insists on trying, determined to save even those who seem beyond hope. Finola throws herself into creating the antidote, ignoring Bryan's doubts. But as time passes, even she realizes that restoring the victims completely may not be possible. Just as despair sets in, she has an idea. She calls Maddox and requests a shard of debris known to have healing abilities, one the government had been testing as a potential cancer treatment. Bryan, however, is furious at her decision and grows increasingly distrustful, convinced she is taking reckless risks. Meanwhile, Priya confronts Finola with devastating evidence. A video showing her father, George Jones, alive and working alongside Turlock's men. She also reveals that Bryan had known this truth but had deliberately kept it from her. Finola's trust in her partner shatters. Though she longs to confront Bryan, Priya warns her not to, reminding her that the US government is withholding information, and Bryan may be the only leverage they have left to uncover the full scope of the project. Back at the farmhouse, Finola makes a compassionate decision. She allows Irfan to reunite with his wife Sophia and their son Arthur, even without protective gear. The family embraces, though the risk remains high. But soon, when the healing shard of debris is activated, its power spreads through the zone, transforming the victims back into normal humans once again. Overjoyed, Finola steps outside, her heart lightened for the first time in days. There she encounters Bryan, who tries to apologize, but her anger over his secrecy about her father burns too deeply. Believing Bryan's behavior was the reason for her coldness, he is left confused, unaware that the real issue is far more personal. Finola walks away, leaving their partnership strained and uncertain. On the side, we see a bus traveling with many passengers on board. Suddenly, everyone hears a strange sound. The moment it stops, a glowing portal materializes in front of the bus. Without warning, the entire bus disappears into it. Moments later, in a scrapyard in another city, another portal opens and spits out the same bus. The sudden jump destabilizes the vehicle, and as it crashes, every single passenger inside is killed. Just then, a man arrives at the scrapyard and inspects the wreck carefully, but his identity and purpose are not revealed yet. The focus shifts back to Finola and Bryan. Finola is still angry at Bryan for hiding the truth about her father, but she sets her feelings aside to travel with him to the crash site. There, a police officer explains that the bus originally came from New Jersey and was pulled into the portal by some unknown force before appearing here. Reviewing CCTV footage from when the bus vanished, the agents discover something disturbing. A man linked to Influx had been watching the bus closely. This suggests Influx used a stolen shard of debris, one capable of teleporting objects, to move the bus. And the audience already knows this shard was stolen because of Maddox, who sold it to the Russian mafia. With the evidence now pointing clearly at Influx, Finola and Bryan head for New Jersey and begin tracking the mysterious man seen in the footage. Soon, they receive hotel surveillance showing him staying with Turlock and his associates. Their presence can mean only one thing. Influx is planning something massive in the city. Rage boils inside Finola. Seeing the faces of the people responsible for keeping her away from her father fills her with fury. She storms outside and angrily calls Priya, begging for permission to move in and arrest them so she can finally get answers about her father. But Priya refuses. For now, MI6 wants to wait and learn what Influx is really planning. Frustrated, Finola has no choice but to obey, though her resentment only deepens. Bryan notices her coldness and grows frustrated himself, unsure of how to repair their partnership. Despite this, the agents continue their investigation. Suddenly, just as at the beginning, the same strange humming sound echoes around them. It abruptly stops, the sign that Influx is once again preparing to open a portal. Panic spreads as everyone realizes another catastrophe is about to begin. Finola and Bryan discuss the possibility that Influx may only have been testing, preparing to create a wormhole in the city later. As they talk, they arrive near a restaurant. Just as they are about to go inside, the terrorist they've been tracking, a man tied to Influx, comes rushing out. The moment he sees the agents, he tries to escape, but with multiple officers already in position, he is quickly cornered at gunpoint. Under questioning, he reveals Influx's terrifying plan. This time, they intend to make an entire city vanish, using debris-powered wormholes to wipe out the CIA's presence completely. But before they can learn more, the man pulls a gun on himself and commits suicide. Now aware of the massive threat, Finola and Bryan focus on finding the group. Priya provides them with a video showing how wormholes require massive steel antenna-like structures to form. That means if Influx intends to teleport an entire city, they will need to anchor the wormhole to one of the city's tallest buildings. With only 3 skyscrapers fitting the criteria, the agents quickly split their teams. Bryan, Finola, and Maddox each take soldiers and head to separate buildings. They also learn that of the 3, only 2 contain active fragments. Combined, those shards could open a wormhole large enough to shift the entire city into another dimension. Meanwhile, Turlock and one of his partners are already inside one of the buildings, attempting to activate a shard. He doesn't realize the agents could strike at any moment. At Bryan's assigned tower, at first he finds nothing, but deeper inside, he spots a shard embedded into a wall, already active. He calls for his science team, but before they can reach the fragment, Influx operatives ambush them, killing most of the scientists. Bryan fights back, eliminating the attackers, but only one scientist survives, gravely injured and unable to work. Determined to save the city, Bryan takes her instructions and personally begins the dangerous process of deactivating the shard. At Maddox's tower, nothing is found, but Finola reaches the 3rd building, only to come face to face with Turlock himself. For a tense moment, it seems he will capture her, but she manages to slip free. Turlock, taking advantage of the chaos, teleports away. Back in Bryan's tower, his risky work pays off. He successfully deactivates the shard, stopping one half of the wormhole from stabilizing. But elsewhere, Turlock's partner has succeeded in activating the other shard, meaning the threat is not yet over. Finola rushes after Turlock in anger, letting her emotions override her usual discipline. But before she can reach him, reinforcements arrive. A squad of officers captures Turlock and takes him into custody. Later, Finola receives something unexpected, a family video showing moments of her own past. Her family once lived in joy and love, but after her parents' death, everything had changed. Watching it leaves her shaken, a reminder of the life she lost. The next day, a new scene begins. Casey and Cole, a teenage couple, wander into an abandoned warehouse. Inside, they find several decomposing bodies. Strangely, the sight doesn't faze them. They simply take what supplies they need and walk out. The strangest thing about the corpses was that their bodies emitted powerful electrical fields. When Finola and Bryan speak with local authorities, Finola recalls how the last time she spoke with her father, George Jones, he had told her he was leaving for Greece, and then suddenly, he committed suicide. Bryan listens carefully because Maddox had earlier asked him to find out where George had last gone. But what Bryan doesn't realize is that Finola is lying. Priya had instructed her to give Bryan false information. The agents examined the decomposed remains. Police confirmed the bodies belonged to 2 elderly men, around 80 years old, who had vanished just 2 days earlier. Contact with a debris fragment had drained them completely, their mass and vitality sucked out, leaving only husks surrounded by electric fields so strong that a mobile phone could charge just by being placed nearby. Checking CCTV footage, Finola and Bryan spot the teenage couple from earlier, Casey and Cole. But curiously, no official records of them exist. This deepens their suspicion, and they begin tracking the pair. Meanwhile, Maddox interrogates Turlock, pressing him for information about George Jones. But Turlock refuses to speak, deliberately keeping his silence. Maddox grows furious and calls Bryan, demanding to know where George had last traveled. Bryan repeats the false information that George went to Greece and returns to work. Soon, reports surface of another missing elderly man, this time named Capsy. Witnesses last saw him with Casey and Cole. Realizing the pattern, Bryan and Finola conclude the teenagers are responsible for the disappearances. Using CCTV, they track the couple's car to its current location and move in. Meanwhile, Cole approaches yet another elderly man, Subhash, who lives alone and has no family. Gaining his trust, Cole persuades him to follow. He leads Subhash into a forest clearing where Casey and two other teenage boys are waiting. At first, Subhash is confused about why the boys are celebrating. Then Cole produces a shard of debris and places it into Subhash's hand. Instantly, Subhash's 80-year-old body transforms into that of a teenage boy. Overjoyed, he joins their group. The truth becomes clear. The shard Casey and Cole possess has the ability to reverse aging, turning the elderly into teenagers again. But there is a hidden cost. As Cole explains, those transformed cannot stray far from the shard's radius. If they do, the energy sustaining them fails, and their bodies shrivel into lifeless husks, just like the corpses the agents found earlier, surrounded by deadly electrical fields. As the group discusses this, Finola, Bryan, and their team finally track Cole's car and arrive at the scene. Bryan seizes one of the teenagers while another agent grabs Subhash, but Casey and Cole manage to escape into the woods. Finola chases one of the transformed boys. He panics and accidentally runs beyond the shard's radius. Within moments, he collapses. His body rapidly withers, the life drained from him, and an electrical field pulses around the corpse, a horrifying confirmation of the shard's deadly condition. Casey and Cole, now hiding nearby, know they cannot take the shard too far, because if they do, Subhash and Capsy, who had been transformed into teenagers, would die instantly. Meanwhile, Bryan is shocked to learn the truth. The two teenage boys he captured are actually Capsy and Subhash, aged men rejuvenated by the shard. Just then, Bryan receives a call from one of his colleagues. He learns that Maddox secretly ordered a raid on Finola's family home, instructing agents to seize everything connected to George Jones. Furious, Bryan realizes Maddox is hiding even more information and is manipulating him to uncover George's secrets. Maddox hadn't told Bryan because he knew Bryan would object, and he hadn't told Finola because she would never have allowed it. Bryan confronts Finola with what he's learned. At first, she admits she withheld the truth from him, not at Maddox's command, but because she once feared the George Jones who appeared might not be real, possibly a clone created by Influx to deceive the CIA. But now, because of Maddox's reckless raid, Bryan is convinced George is truly alive. The tension between them eases slightly as they refocus on solving the case. At the warehouse where the bodies had been found, the team discovers a walkie-talkie belonging to Cole. Bryan uses it to contact him, pleading with him to return if he wants to save Casey, Subhash, and Capsy. But Cole refuses to listen, angrily cutting off the connection. Moments later, Bryan receives another call, this time from the doctor who performed the autopsies on the shriveled bodies. The truth is shocking. The shard drained all their life energy. However, if scientists can recover the fragment, they may be able to restore Casey, Cole, Subhash, and Capsy to normal. If not, the four will eventually die the moment they stray too far from the shard. Armed with this information, Bryan contacts Cole again. At last, Cole reveals his heartbreaking story. He admits all he ever wanted was to live peacefully with his wife, Casey. But they had grown old. Both were in their 90s, and Casey had developed dementia, often forgetting who he was. Then, by chance, Cole discovered the shard. It transformed him back into a teenager, and he used it to make Casey young again too. Finally, he had what he longed for, to relive his youth with the woman he loved. And now, all he wants is to keep living with Casey in this second chance at life. But Bryan warns him that if he continues down this path, he will lose everything again. And that's where we'll pause for now. We've seen how debris continues to twist human lives in terrifying and heartbreaking ways, this time giving an old couple the chance to relive their youth, but at a terrible cost that threatens to destroy them all over again. Finola and Bryan are caught between their mission and human emotion, while Maddox's secrets and George Jones's mysterious return make the bigger picture even more dangerous. In the next part, we'll see whether Bryan can convince Cole to let go of the shard, what really becomes of Casey, Subhash, and Capsy, and how the agents will handle Maddox's growing betrayal. And of course, the mystery of George Jones is only just beginning. If you enjoyed the explanation so far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss the next episode breakdown. The story is only going to get more intense from here. Until then, ta-ta and goodbye.